Hello everyone, I'm here today to do my wrap-up for the month of August. I have read a lot in August. According to Storygraph, I have read 15 books and 4,313 pages. Now the page number is a bit misleading because I have read a graphic novel and I have read several big non-fiction books that have like more than 100 pages of references at the end, so I think it's more like probably like 3,500 or something, which is still a lot for me. We were in Manchester at the beginning of the month. I have a vlog for that, but also we were sharing the room with Alex, so whenever Alex had to sleep we had to be in the dark, and that meant a lot of reading ebooks because that's the only thing that I could do. So yeah, I've read a lot. I'm happy with that. And let's just go into the books. So the first book I finished was Swallowing Mercury by Wioletta. Now this I read mostly in July and I just finished it in August. It is a short book that tells the story of a Polish girl and like growing up. It's a coming of age story and I thought it was just okay. It's very overwritten in my opinion, and it's yeah, it's nothing that special to me, but yeah, it's fine. Then I finished Eva's Lips by Francesca Melandri, which was it was an interesting story in the sense that it was set around, I think, First World War, but it was set in the Tyrol area of Italy, which it's very German culturally. And it kind of tells the story of how that region became Italy, and there was discussions about if it should be independent, if there should have been some sort of independent movement of that region because it has its own particular characteristics. And yeah, it was interesting. I have never read anything about that area, and I learned a lot. I think the story itself, like the plot and the characters and stuff, I was not that invested in. It was a lot about messy family relationships and stepfathers and yeah, that kind of thing, like teenage pregnancies, that kind of stuff, which was just fine. But I think that the political aspects of that region I enjoyed, and I'm glad I learn more about that. And the next book I finished was Hair Everywhere by Tulić, which is a very short book about this woman whose mom has cancer and kind of like following that process of is she gonna die, is she okay, and like all of the things that come with that. For some reason I think that the cover and the fact that it's so short was giving me middle grade vibes, but it's not a middle grade. The daughter that is like the main character we follow is in her 20s, I believe. And yeah, I found this very mild. Like I have read a few books about people dealing with their partners or their parents having cancer, and this is not one of the better ones, I would say. It was kind of forgettable, and it was also not not that deep, basically. So it was okay. Then the next book that I read was Barcode by Krisztina Tóth, which is a collection of short stories that all kind of have to do with bars. Each of them has like something that related to bars in the title, and I think that that's kind of gives you an idea of like how much of a wordplay there were in this book. There was a lot of wordplay. It was a lot about the language, and I think if I would have read this in the original Hungarian, if I could, I would have gotten much more out of it, because even at the beginning there was a note by the translator explaining that some of those things are obviously not translatable, but then she tried to find other things that worked in English that the author didn't put there, just so that we could then get an idea of the wordplay and stuff. The stories themselves were quite standard, but like the language of it was the main focus, and that worked for me for some stories, but not for all of them. I think at some point it became a little bit long, and yeah, it like the novelty wore out kind of. So yeah, it was fine. And the next book I finished was All That She Carried by Tiya Miles, which is part of the Women's Prize of Non-Fiction long list, which has already passed, but I'm still making my way through those books because I have found a lot of books that are very interesting to me in that list, and I have enjoyed most of the things I have read from the list. So I'm working through the list, and this was the one that I picked next, and I liked it more than I thought I would. It's about this historian investigating the life of this woman from basically based on this bag that they found, because this woman had a child, and that child was separated from them, from the slave owners. So when they were separated, she put some stuff in this bag and gave it to her daughter for her to like remember her, but also like survive. And the historian perspective is trying to look at who this woman was from a very like scientific way, not just like novelizing her life, and also like from the things that were in that bag and similar aspects of it, what was important to these slaves when they were living in these conditions. And I thought it did a really good job at looking at really like what it meant to be enslaved and the day-to-day life, and what it is that it was important to them, what they valued, like practical things like pecans have a lot of nutrients, so they would prefer that over bread or whatever other things they had, or like how much they valued the clothes they had and how they tried to express themselves through that, because they had some freedom on that sense, but at the same time if they dress certain ways, maybe the man of the house will take more interest in them and that will be negative. So a lot of these little things in like really day-to-day life, and I think that was really well done. And then the next one I read was another one for the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction, and that was Young Queens by Leah, Redmond, Chang. This one I didn't enjoy as much just because I am not so interested on royalty. It's not something that I'm over the moon about. I don't want to know more about them. They're just rich people, privileged people. But yeah, she shone some light on queens at that time in like the 1800s and how hard their life was. Like they don't have much choice, but some of these women did make themselves a choice anyway, and that's like that dynamics is reflected in this book. I was also a little bit lost because everyone at that time had the same names. Like everyone was Henry or like Thomas or Catherine. So yeah, that one was just okay for me. The next one I read was 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak, and this follows a woman in the US who is a bit, she has adult children and she's a little bit not super happy with her life and her husband, and she gets a part-time job being like a proofreader of editor of manuscripts in a publisher, and she gets this manuscript about some like Muslim cultural things and these people that historical people that lived in I think the 1300s or something, and she kind of falls in love with the author of those books and kind of goes into her own journey. It honestly read a little bit like The Alchemist, but better written. But yeah, it was fine. I enjoyed it enough, but it's not life-changing. Next one I have is Thunderclap by Cumming, and this is a little bit difficult to describe. So this is about Laura Cumming and her relationship with her dad and their relationship with Dutch art. and it is described as what happened in the Thunderclap, which was an explosion from like a storage place in Delft that killed the painter Fabricius, but that actually only happens at the very end of the book, I feel. The rest of it is just talking about Dutch art and her relationship with Dutch art and her dad's relationship with Dutch art. I thought it was fine. I learned a lot. Art is not something I'm naturally super drawn to read about, but it was interesting because a lot of these pictures I know, a lot of these places I know. I live in The Hague, I work in Delft, so I have been to a lot of these museums, I have seen a lot of these paintings, and it just felt a little bit nostalgic to me just because it's all so familiar. One thing I would say, it has like a lot of the pictures here, but they don't have any like captions or anything, so the text talks about each picture, but they don't, like, you're not 100% sure that the picture that you're seeing is the picture they're talking about, because not all of the pictures that they talk about are in the book, and I found that a little bit annoying. I wish just have said like, this is this painting from this author or from this painter and from this time. That's all I needed. So yeah, it was a little bit annoying for me that was not there, but other than that, I enjoyed it. I have to say also, like, the physical book, this is a paperback and it was the price of a normal paperback, but because of the pictures, the paper is very thick and it just feels very luxurious, so I enjoyed that. The next book is The Song of Seven by Tonke Dragt. This is a classic book for children from the Netherlands, and it's a little bit convoluted. It follows this teacher, and he's like implicated in some weird stuff. He is asked to be the tutor of this boy that lives in sort of like a mansion kind of house in a nearby town, but there's a lot of questions about the house itself, if it's like magical, and the uncle that takes care of this kid and his intentions about all of these things. And he gets brought up into this conspiracy of seven that's trying to save the boy, and he tries to like see what all of this is. I mean, it was fun, but I found that some of the things that it said were not very believable. Like, this teacher just didn't question anything and just was like, oh, I have to apply for that job so that I can save the boy. Sure, I'll do that. And oh, you are going to bring me a person that I have never met before. Sure, let's go, let's do that. So it was a little bit like jarring at points, but yeah, it was fun children's book. It has some nice illustrations as well that I think the author herself made. So yeah, that was also fun. This is like the map of the place. It's fun. I enjoyed it enough. The next book I finished was Negative of a Group Photograph by Azita Ghahreman, which is a poetry collection from this Iranian author, and it's both in Farsi and in English in the edition that I read. And obviously I cannot read Farsi, like the symbols don't mean anything to me, but I always appreciate when that happens, because sometimes you can see the shapes that the poems make, and that's nice. This collection was mostly about nostalgia, I would say. It's more about like the little moments in her hometown and her home area, and like family and all of that stuff. So yeah, it felt warm, and I enjoyed it as well. The next one is In Our Mad and Furious City by Gunaratne, and this is about a group of people that live in the flats in London, like a very impoverished area, and it's about like their struggles, and it also follows it's kind of building up to these riots that happened there. And it kind of, like, the structure and the way it's told reminded me of There by Tommy Orange, because we follow these little snippets of the everyday lives of all of these characters, until, yeah, at the end it all collapses into this, like, riot situation. It doesn't work for me 100% because it has too many characters and I don't get attached to that many characters at one time. Most of the times it just almost feels like short stories, and they were too short to connect to anything or, like, follow anything or understand anything properly for me. But I can see the appeal for some people that don't have that issue. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's not my favorite kind of book. Next one I finished is Some People Need Killing by Patricia Evangelista, which is again for part of the Women's Prize for non-fiction long list. And this was a very hard book to go through. It is about Duarte, which is the prime minister in the Philippines, and his war against drugs, which basically means kill anyone that is involved in drugs, either users, small dealers, big dealers, everyone just needs to be killed. And obviously that gives also room for them to kill people that never had anything to do with drugs and just claim that they were using drugs, and so they can basically kill anybody, and the police has complete green light to kill anybody, which is not a great thing to do or a great place to live then. And she was just investigating all of these issues in Philippines, and this has happened, like, recently, like during Corona. This was still going, kind of thing. So yeah, it was very hard to go through because of the topic that it covers. I also felt like it was a little bit repetitive at times in the way that the story is told, but at the same time, like, I understand that it's repetitive because these things are repetitive. Like, people keep getting killed and keep getting killed and nothing is changing, and that's the issue. So I think the book was good. It was just really hard to get through because of the topic. The next book I read is Ducks by Kate Beaton. It's a graphic novel about her experience in working in the oil sands in Canada. So she studied arts in Canada. She's from Nova Scotia, and when she finished her degree, she had a lot of debt because of her degree, but there was no jobs in Nova Scotia that could give her the kind of money she needed to pay off those loans. So she decides that she's going to go work in the oil sands in Alberta for a few years, make enough money to pay off those loans, and then she can dedicate her life to do whatever she wants to do. That's where it starts, and so we mostly follow her experience in the oil sands for the majority of the book, and the conditions there, how difficult it is for her, because of, like, it's a very isolated place and everyone is dealing with their feelings about isolation and stuff, but also because she's a woman, and being a woman in a male-dominated environment is always really hard. And obviously I do work in a male environment, but it's not the same because I don't live also in that environment. There is trigger warnings for rape and sexual assault and, like, sexual harassment and all of that all of the time, basically. And that also, like, it's because it is a graphic novel, that is more graphic. It's not graphical, like, you don't see sex graphical in the page, but it's like the way that she's able to express those feelings in this book are amazing. I also like the way that she was able to show that, she has these experiences, but she has to keep going because she has to keep paying these things, and telling her get out of that situation is useless for her because she just can't. She needs to pay those loans. So it is interesting to see her like keep going while still she is affected, deeply affected by these things, and she has this struggle inside her of she hates it there and she feels vulnerable and all of that, but at the same time she just doesn't feel like she has the option. So she keeps going, and she seems like she's okay. At some point she tries to complain to her supervisor, and he's like, you should stop complaining, which is such a relatable thing. And yeah, it's just so so well done. Like, it's so well done. There was one thing, this I've read this from my book club, and we were commenting at the end, there is this part in which she also starts looking at the environmental impact that these oil sands are having in the area, but also in the Native American people, the Native Canadian people that live there, and that only happens at the end. And we were saying, like, I personally would have liked to see more of that, and more of that indigenous and environmental aspects of what she is doing, and maybe she can address that more thoroughly in another book, because this is not what this book was about. And she says that in the afterword, there is a 2-page afterword that she explains, like, there were more issues that were in the oil sands that I didn't personally experience, and therefore they are not a prevalent thing in the book, but I am aware that they exist, and these were some of them. And also we were talking about the fact that it's only at the end, probably because that's when she allowed herself to research that, because she obviously is not happy that these things are happening, but she cannot do anything about it. She needs this money, so she like closes her eyes to it until she's able to leave, and then she can open her eyes to all of the extra horrible things that these oil sands imply. So it was interesting to see that part as well. I think that was a nice addition, that at least it was recognized and mentioned. The art is cartoonish, but it's very expressive. I don't know if you can see. And that also was, I really enjoyed, and it also has some of these like really beautiful parts, and like the book itself is beautifully produced. Like, if I take the dust jacket off, it's really beautiful as well, like as an object. I really enjoyed it. My friend from the book club said that he has read her web comic series, which is about little snippets of history, but like in a funny way, which I'm really looking forward to read, because it sounds like it's gonna be nice, very nice. But she hasn't written any other like long form graphic novels, so I'll be looking out if she brings anything else in the future. Then the next book I finished was maybe Esther by Katja and Petrowskaja, which is about, again, Second World War. It's about the her family history, let's say. Her, I think, grandfather had a school for the deaf and the blind, and they were working with that aspect, and she talked about the feelings around that that kind of work, and also how, because they are from the Jewish community, how they were affected once the Nazis came to power. They were also affected, like the Russians also had things against the Jews and sent them to the Gulag. So that was more of like the side of history that her family experienced. And she also talks about her experience finding out all of these things about her family, and also like visiting the concentration camps, and how that made her feel, and how like her feelings around the tourist industry around that and stuff like that. I think that from Second World War and concentration camp kind of narratives, this was one of the better ones. but to me there's just too many of those, and at some point you're desensitized from them. So this didn't have the impact that I could have had from those kind of narratives, but still I appreciate it, and I think the narrative style was very good. I was thinking that it feels a bit like what In Memory by Maria Stefanova should have been, like this discovering of the family secrets and family history, while still making an appealing narrative. And then the last book that I finished this month is Birnam by Eleanor Catton. This was sort of a mystery narrative. So we are following this collective that is called Birnam Woods, and the main thing that they do is they find private land that is not being used by the owners, maybe because of speculation within the housing market or something like that, and they just use it to plant edible vegetables and like grow plants that are better for the environment. And so Mira, which is one of the main people that started this movement, is looking at this property near a national park that belongs to a lord, and she decides to go there and start planting things. It doesn't seem to be inhabited, so she's like, let's just take this opportunity. And when she goes there, she finds this man in an airplane that claims to be a billionaire, and he says that he's in the process of buying this land from this lord, but he is interested in what their community is doing, and so he decides that they can strike sort of like a pact that they go work there, and he gives them money for it, which the cooperative really needs. And that's kind of where it starts, but we find more and more things about this man that are not like super good, and like how this cooperative works and all of that. I like the dynamics of the cooperative. I think that was very well done. Other than that, I think like the mystery was also interesting. I finished this really late at night because I needed to know what happened, but I felt like the characters were a little bit like caricatures of themselves, like they were very two-dimensional. So unfortunately that didn't work for me as well as I wanted, because this is the author of The Luminaries and I love that book, and this was not as good as The Luminaries, but still enjoyable. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but there were some issues that I wish they could have been fixed. And those are all the books that I read this month. Let me know if you have read any of them, what your thoughts on them are. If you have any other books that you have read this month and love, let me know down in the comments below. And until next video, bye!